What up, all my tech mixers? Today we've got another Rings of Power breakdown deep dive video thingy for you. And what's the topic of today's video? You guessed it. I mean, or didn't guess it if you read the title or saw the thumbnail of this video. We're talking about how Amazon and the Rings of Power have a fundamental lack of understanding of geography, which is why you see before you a beautiful map of Arda, which is the world that the Lord of the Rings takes place on. This is Arda, that's the whole planet, and this little teeny part right here is the Middle Earth part where, you know, the story takes place that you know. But Rings of Power takes place also over here very briefly in episode 1. Because that's Valinor, guys. And then a little bit of it takes place right here on Numenor, but most of it takes place down here in the Southlands, and then a little bit up here, and that's it. In this video, we're going to talk about how the show Rings of Power just doesn't understand maps and distance and stuff, and just threw them out the window for the show that they were going to make. So it's actually really ironic, because Amazon is supposedly a logistics shipping company, and they should know, you know, how maps work, but they don't, because they're stupid, and it really shows in the Rings of Power, because they had to throw maps out of the window in order for the show to make sense. So let's get into it. Let's break it down. We're gonna have a good time, everybody.
Oh, he's technically Mexican and 3/4 American, but for 3 generations he's got that nationality. Great-great-grandpa headed south, whose kids had kids then turned around. It's not what the show's about, but it's why he's Mexican technically. He helps that he was raised in New Mexico, lived in Guadalajara for 2 years, speaks fluent Spanish with a bachelor's degree in language, and examine taquito.
Okay, so one thing that really started bugging me when I was watching the show, and started bugging me even more when I was really diving into the episodes to make my meme edits, was the show's just fundamental lack of understanding of geography. And there are so many stupid things that happened in this show that just shows how stupid these people are. So what's crazy is one of the very few praises that I had for this show is that in the first couple episodes, there were some beautiful transitions that used maps of Arda to switch between the storylines of characters that were on different parts of the world. It really helped establish the vastness of this world and the locations of all of the pieces that were going to be at play throughout this whole thing. And it was actually done really well, which is funny, because after the first couple episodes, they had to stop showing those map transitions because it would have broken your suspension of disbelief, because they started teleporting all over Arda with zero consideration taken to how long that would have taken. And they realized they had to stop doing the maps, otherwise the show would have fallen apart. So let's get into the specific examples. This is one of those map transitions that was done really well. It's this beautiful transition between Eregion and Khazad-dûm. It's phenomenal. That looks real good. The problem is the distance between Eregion and Khazad-dûm is about like 150 miles. And throughout the course of the show, characters like Elrond, Celebrimbor, and Durin literally just teleport back and forth between these two locations with no consideration for how long it would have taken. And we're starting with this one because this is the least egregious of the show's offenses. But it's still pretty bad. And even the first time they do it, you have Elrond here talking to Celebrimbor, and they say, hey, let's head off to Khazad-dûm. Then the very next shot is, hey, map transition. And then it shows them at Khazad-dûm arriving on foot. They just walked the whole way. They don't have horses or bags or provisions. They just walked 150 miles from Eregion to Khazad-dûm, which some might consider a little bit silly. So this was one of the first little cracks that started showing up in the show. You know, aside from all the constant lore breaking, this was one of the first ridiculous internal consistencies. And I promise you, it is the least offensive. But throughout the course of the show, they teleport back and forth constantly. Like, it doesn't even take a single day to travel between these two cities, and you have characters just going back and forth all the time. It's dumb. But like I said, it's one of the least offensive things to happen in the show because, like, in the grand scheme of things, that's like going from here to here on the big map of Middle-earth, and, you know, it's fine. It's whatever. But then they keep doing stupid stuff. Let's talk about offense number 2. Galadriel and Halbrand. They both, they go so far. So here in this scene, you see a transition that comes from the Southlands to the Sundering Sea, and it looks really, really good. And again, this was in episode 2, I believe, when they were still doing map transitions, but we're going to show it because it'll become important later. So here's the transition. It's a beautiful map, really. So you get the Southlands, and then you go wee all the way across Middle-earth, and then to the Sundering Sea, where you find Galadriel. So she's been sent back to Valinor. Now let's pull up the big map of Arda. So she was in Linden right here, and she takes a boat back to the Undying Lands, okay? So that probably just went, you know, straight across. Now, in the show, they depict a barrier between Middle-earth and Valinor that the boat they have to sing a song to go through, and while that is lore-breaking, because that wouldn't take place in the Second Age, it's not what we're here to complain about. But that veil would roughly be around where the Enchanted Isles would be on this map. That's kind of like the barrier, you know, between the Undying Lands and Middle-earth. So she sailed from here to Linden, and then, you know, to right about here. She jumps off, like, right at the barrier. And then, as you know, if you've seen the show, she jumps into the ocean, and she can't go this way. And I guess her intent was to just swim all the way back to Middle-earth, which is insane. If you go back to this map, this distance right here, between Rigion and Khazad-dûm is about 150 miles, give or take like 10. And zoomed out, that's like right here. That's about this. See how little my mouse is moving? That's about 150 miles right there. And so she'd have to swim roughly more than that to get back to land. Because I don't think she was planning on swimming to Numenor. There, you know, it would have been a little bit closer, but not by much. But we know by the show that she encounters Monsieur Halbrand on a raft somewhere in the middle of the sea. So let's say she swam for like 100 miles. So she found Halbrand on a raft like right about here. And then everybody dies, and they float around on the raft aimlessly for a while. And then a boat finds them somewhere and then takes them all the way back to Numenor. Which, sure, yeah, the boat part is believable, but Galadriel's plan to swim significantly more than 150 miles, you know, well into the thousands, is stupid. So, you know, that's one of the logical inconsistencies that the show introduces that I found really stupid, but apparently, you know, a lot of people didn't care about. But the reason that I care about it so much is that, you know, of all the authors you could have picked to bastardize their work, Tolkien was meticulous in making sure that every single thing that happens in his books was logical. I mean, he wrote multiple phonetic languages because he's insane. And he was always making fixes and corrections to his and tweaking his lore to make sure that everything was logically consistent. And this show, for some reason, doesn't care about logic, which, you know, it's offensive to me, and it's offensive to Tolkien, and he's probably rolling in his grave. But remember that map transition that I said would come back to haunt us? You know, this one that transitions from the Southlands all the way to the Sundering Sea. The show didn't even realize this, but this transition is showing Halbrand's journey from the Southlands to the Sundering Sea, where he eventually meets up with Galadriel. Now, if you start to think about that, that doesn't make any freaking sense. Because he was down here, you know, south in the Southlands, and he apparently and he would have started in a boat, and then for some reason, instead of sailing anywhere important, went all the way up here, where they got attacked by a sea monster. Humans cannot go to the Undying Lands because the barrier. So there's absolutely no reason why they would have been sailing that way. They would have been sailing over here, or to Numenor, or down even more south, or anywhere away from... They said they were fleeing. They said they were fleeing the orcs. So why would they sail all the way over there, unless the show is trying to say that they didn't have a boat, and they started on a raft, and they were just blown around on the sea. Anyway, Halbrand started out here, and somehow ended up on a raft, all the way out there, and that's really stupid. That's really stupid. It's really dumb. Let's talk about offense number 3. So then we get to episode 6, where the Numenoreans decide to show up and help fight in the Southlands for reasons. And they and for the first time in a long time, they briefly show little teeny snippets of the maps, but it's really quick because they don't want you to pay attention, because they realized how bad it was. So the Numenoreans sail from Numenor to the Southlands in about less than a day to show up and help fight in Mordor. And all of the timeline of all of this just makes even less sense, because you had Halbrand leave and sail all the way over here, and Galadriel sail all the way over here, and then sail all the way to Numenor, and then spend a week there, and then decide to go back to the Southlands to help fight, all in the same amount of time that Arondir and the Boob Lady were doing their stuff in the Southlands. And their storyline takes a couple of days. So we're already way beyond logic, but I digress. So Numenor starts sailing from here to the Southlands, and you see the Queen Regent Miriel, who in the books never actually served as Queen Regent because she was usurped. You see her looking at this map, and they say, "Hey, we gotta go to help in the Southlands. That's definitely not called Mordor yet." And they say, we're gonna sail through the sea, and then we're gonna go up the river, which, if you had boats that were carrying 300 horses and 300 men, you wouldn't be able to sail that far up the river. But they forgot about that, and they made their boats really small, which the size of the boats that they show would have been able to travel upriver, but then they wouldn't have had any soldiers like they show later on. But then they do this funny little thing here. They say, "Hey, we need to go right here. We gotta go save these people," because Halbrand, a month ago or something, said that there were some baddies over here, even though it doesn't make any sense why he would know where to go. They say, we gotta go right here. Yeah, so she puts her finger on the map and says, "Here, we gotta go here, everybody, and that's where our troops need to go." And then they zoom in real close on the map, so hey, this is where we're going to show up. And she's got this fancy little magnifying glass that looks really cool until you realize why they put it in the shot. Maybe look at it for a second and tell me, what is that magnifying glass covering up? I'll leave you to your thoughts. What's it covering up, guys? Oh yeah, that's right. This giant, impassable mountain range. Look at that. They place it right on top, so your eye will trick you, and you'll forget that there's a giant mountain range here. Now, if you recall in The Lord of the Rings, Frodo had to get into Mordor, and there was a problem with that because they couldn't get into Mordor because of the impassable mountain ranges, everybody. There was one big entrance right up here, and it was called the Black Gate. And it was narrow and not very big, and they didn't go that way because it was guarded by lots of bad guys. So Gollum told them, "Hey, there's another way to go if you come down this way and you go to Minas Morgul." Now, to the naked eye, it may appear like there's no mountain right here and there's a clearing, but that's just because the word is in the way. There is, in fact, a giant mountain here, because if you remember from the movies, Frodo and Sam and Gollum had to climb that giant mountain, the winding stair, the one that led to Shelob that almost killed them. Yeah, that's the only way to get through those mountains. But for the show to happen, they needed to forget that those mountains are there because the writers are incompetent and they don't know anything about geography. So here's a zoom into the Southland maps. You can see right here is the guard tower that the elves were guarding, and then right here is the town where the boob lady was at, and then right here was that other town that Arondir and the boob lady went to that was all destroyed, and then they tried to warn everyone in this town. And then right up here is Mount Doom. See, we got these nice little arrows pointing out the locations of the major players in that area. And that's what it looks like, a little simplified. So in order to get here, the Numenoreans have to sail through the sea, all up this teeny river, and probably stop, right about here. I don't know, the show probably said, hey, they go up this river too. And then just teleport through the mountains. I don't know if you know this, guys, but, humans can go over mountains pretty good, but horses definitely can't. Anyway, I've already talked about that ad nauseum, and I digress. But this brings up another little tangent I'd like to, bring to your attention. You remember this scene, when they do the whole volcano thing, which I already talked about in the last video. So the key goes into the thing, and that thing opens up the dam. See, it's a magic little dam key sword. And this location is at the tower that Arondir was guarding with the elves and overlooking, the Southland people in the city. So the water falls down from this place, and as you know, it falls off of the cliff and then into a tunnel. And we discussed this last time, but miraculously, the water has to travel, uphill all the way to Mount Doom. Now, we already talked about how ridiculous this whole crappy thing was with the explosion. But let me bring your attention back to the map. This is the guard tower right here. So the water was up here in the mountain, and it fell down the mountain, and then traveled all the way up to Mount Doom uphill. So there's that. If you want to look at the zoomed out map, that's about the same distance that Elrond and Celebrimbor teleported between Eregion and Khazad Dûm. The distance between Mount Doom and, it's equidistant. It's about 150 miles uphill. So the showrunners are retarded. But before all that, we get this scene where Elendil is talking to Galadriel, and he says this line that's really stupid.
It is strange. Most of my life I've looked east to see the sun rise over the sea, and west to see it set over the land. We're sailing into the dawn, and yet to me, it feels like the coming of night.
Oh, it's so poetic. It's so Tolkien-esque. It's so bullcrap. Because, if he lives on Numenor, if he wants to look east to see the sun rising, he has to live here, or right there. Literally anywhere else on the island, if he looks east, he's going to see the sun rising over more land. That's dumb. That line would have made sense if he was living on Valinor. Maybe. But Numenor's it's an island. Whatever. That's a little nitpick. The final nail in this coffin for this stupid show, though, is the cavalry arriving at that one town whose name I could not care less to learn how to pronounce. When they save the day. So first off, they've already sailed this whole distance in the matter of seconds, and then traveled this whole distance too in the matter of less seconds, and then teleported through the mountain range. But because the showrunners, wanted to mirror that, that one cool scene from the Two Towers where Gandalf shows up and they ride their horses and the sun is behind them, they put in this little thing. So you look at that. Oh, it's so cool. Look, the horses are arriving and the sun is behind them. Oh man, and then the next shot, for some reason, the sun's gone, because internal consistency in your lighting isn't important at all. But they show up to the city where they can save the day and do the fighting. But if you recall from this dumb scene, the Numenoreans are coming from the west. Okay, Let's look at the map again. They're coming from the west, and they need to show up to this city. So here's a little trivia question for you, my boys. If they're riding towards the city, should the sun be behind them or in front of them? If you answered in front of them, you'd be correct. But the show was stupid and dumb and cheap, and they wanted their free points because they wanted to have this shot that looked so good that they didn't even think about the map. Oh man, it's so dumb. And then to top it off, what's even more funny is when they show up at the city. Well, the sun's gone again, but then here's the shot. You've got the sun in their faces. So they are still riding from the west, but you also had this shot for some reason because you're stupid. And it's not just the light in their faces here. This shot also shows the watchtower in the background. So if you go back to the map, the watchtower would be here and the town would be here. So they're riding this way. So if we want to take these show riders at face value, the Numenoreans would have had to sail up the city, then get on their horses, then ride through the mountains, then do a loop-de-loop, then ride in with the sun behind them, then do another loop-de-loop, and then ride into the city to save all the people. It sounds like they were in a real hurry to get there to help. Maybe that's just me. So where did the shot come from, guys? It's so stupid. I'm so tired of how dumb this show was. But, that's another one for the history books, boys. Because, never mind, being faithful to Tolkien and his desire to make everything consistent and logical. If you're going to make a show based on his works, apparently you can just, not care about any of that stuff. So, yeah, those are my nitpicks about how Amazon doesn't give two hoots about geography when they really should in a show, and it has no internal consistency. And we'll see you in the next one, boys. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. This show has drained the life from me. Bye.